Are you on the keto diet and missing out on chapatis?
Well, stay tuned for the super simple, super delicious low-carb chapatis that don't taste low-carb.
So one of the things that I miss most while being on the keto diet is eating a chapati with my Indian meal.
And that's me, and that's a lot of other people we know that have the same issue. And we know that there's a lot of recipes out there for chapatis, and they look great. They produce something that looks pretty much like a chapati, but when you taste it, it doesn't cut it. It's gummy, it's slimy, and like all kinds of crazy textures that you really don't want your chapati to have.
So after numerous trials, we have finally come up with a keto chapati recipe that we know that you're gonna love.
Absolutely. So it's got a couple of ingredients here. Some of them you may or may not have in your pantry, but if you're on keto already, then chances are you probably have these ingredients already. And if not, it's a good time to purchase them because they're actually life-changing.
Here's all the ingredients that we'll be using for this recipe.
1/4 cup flaxseed meal, 1/4 cup wheat bran, 1/4 cup whey protein isolate, 1/4 cup coconut flour, 1/4 cup almond flour, 1 tablespoon oat bran, 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk, 1/2 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder. I know a lot of these ingredients that we're using today already come pre-milled or ground up into powders or whatnot, but for this recipe, we're going to take it a little step further and grind them down further because even though they're in their ground form, we really want a super, super fine flour, and that gives a really good texture to our chapatis. And we have a spice grinder. I'm sure a lot of you already have something like this at home. A little coffee grinder will work. This is my wet and dry grinder that does both, so that's what I'm using today. And I'm going to put our flaxseed meal, I'm going to put the wheat bran, I'm going to put the oat bran, and the psyllium husk. So those 4 ingredients I'm going to mix together into the spice grinder and then grind it up even further so that it's a super fine flour. And here's our flour. It's finely ground now. I'm going to put it into a bowl.
And then next we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients.
And you want to mix it around so that it gets evenly incorporated. One of the doubts I know all of you guys will have is the wheat bran that we're using in this recipe, and you're going to say, that's not keto, wheat bran is not keto. You're right, it's not keto per se, eating it all by itself. It's also not gluten-free, so if you have any kind of celiac disease problems or gluten problems, then this recipe is probably not going to be for you. But we're using it in such small quantities with a variety of other things that this is going to bring our chapati flavor and texture the closest it can be to an actual chapati. Now, even though we're using a small amount and it's not technically keto friendly, because it's a small amount over this entire serving of 9 possibly chapatis, it's going to be negligible carb count. So your carbs are still going to be well under like a 1 to 1.5 carbs per chapati, which is fantastic.
So once we have all the ingredients mixed together in a bowl, we're going to get 1 cup of boiling hot water and we're going to pour it into the ingredients.
And make sure it's boiling because it really needs to be super, super hot in order for some of those ingredients in there like the flaxseed meal and the psyllium husk just to get activated. Keep mixing until it forms a dough ball. Once it comes together into a ball, we're going to cover it and let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes.
So while our dough is resting, we're going to be talking about a couple of other things we need to do.
Now remember that this dough is different than your regular chapati dough. It doesn't have all that gluten in it, so we're not going to be able to roll it like a normal chapati. And therefore, we're going to use the aid of parchment paper. I highly recommend parchment paper. It's cheap and you can throw it away at the end of the day. If you don't want to use parchment paper, you can also use those silicone mats like Silpad or something like that to roll this out. Those are 2 different ways of rolling it out. And I'm going to go a step further and use like a tortilla press, a chapati press like this. This is super fancy. You don't need one like this. It's from yesteryears. I just happen to have this. But there are other, chapati presses like that are not this fancy that still do the job. And the reason I like to use this is because it provides you a nice round chapati. If you're a super expert at rolling and making them all round, then you can go ahead and definitely try and roll it between these things. But this makes it a lot easier. We'll show you right now. So it's been about 10 minutes, and let's take a look at our dough and see how nice and soft it is. So we're just gonna take it and kind of knead it. The reason we didn't touch it before is because we were using boiling water and didn't want to burn ourselves, but now the dough is just nice and warm and easy to handle. So once it's like this, we're gonna portion it out into about 9 dough balls. This is enough to make 9 good-sized chapatis. And 1 dough ball should be just enough to fit in the fist of your hand, and that's a good size. All right, so here's our 9 dough balls, and we have our tortilla press here. We got 1 piece of parchment paper. We're gonna take one of our dough balls and center it and lightly press it down. Second piece of parchment paper over the top, and press. And you have a perfectly round chapati. Now, if this is too thick for you, you can also pull this off of the press and take a rolling pin and just further flatten it out and thin it out. Depends on what texture you want. Personally, we prefer it thinner. And when you pull it off, it's still round and still perfect. And now we're going to go ahead and cook this. All right, we have our chapati tawa on medium heat, and it's nice and hot. And we have our rolled out chapati. I'm going to gently peel off the parchment paper, and it comes off pretty easily. And we're going to drop it on the pan. And we'll let it sit there without touching it for about a minute, minute and a half until that side cooks, and we're going to go ahead and flip it over. Okay, it's been about a minute. We're going to go ahead and flip this over. Perfect. And once it cooks about 30-40 seconds on this side, we have a little bit of avocado oil. You can use ghee, you can use coconut oil, you can use butter, and just move it around. Flip. And just gently press until it's all equally and evenly cooked. Is ready to serve. Now you can keep it in an insulated container like this and continue making the rest of them.
So here's our chapati, and it looks very similar to the regular chapatis. So let's taste it.
Yep. See how smooth it is? It's very pliable.
Oh my gosh. So good.
This is the closest that we've been able to get to the taste and texture of a real chapati, an actual chapati. Now, it's got a lot of ingredients going on in there, we know, but the combination of all of that produces that, and it's amazing.
So I'm sure some of you might not have whey protein, but that's okay.
Now, whey protein isolate, it's really good to use. I love to use it because I am a vegetarian, and I'm always fighting to get some protein sources here and there. Unfortunately, though I do eat eggs in, things that I can't taste them in, I don't prefer the taste of eggs. So it's even equally more important for me to find other protein sources. So the whey protein is excellent. You mix it in there, you can't taste it, and it amps up the protein level. Each chapati is going to give you like 4 grams of protein, which is like very close to an egg. I think an egg has about 6 grams. So you're approaching like an egg, just eating a chapati, which has no eggs in it. But the downside of the whey protein, it gives you a sticker shock. It is a little expensive. I bought mine from, like I said, unflavored, just standard whey protein in bulk from our Sprouts grocery store that we have locally here. And it's like $12 for a pound, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty pricey, it's $12. But we're only using a 1/4 cup in here, and if you break down the price, it ends up being like 30-40 cents or something around there, which is negligible. So if it's going to give you that much protein and it's not that expensive, that's the way to go. That's how I see it. Nonetheless, if you just don't have it, if you cannot find it, or you just don't want to use it, you can make this recipe completely omitting the whey protein altogether. So it's got a 1/4 cup in there, which is 4 tablespoons, which is a 1/4 cup. So instead of using the whey protein, just increase all your flours, your oat bran, your wheat bran, your coconut flour, your almond flour. Just increase it by 1 tablespoon each, and that'll compensate for the amount of whey protein that your recipe is lacking. And the other thing that we used in our recipe, if you remember, is baking powder. Now, whey protein in recipes, it tends to dry out the recipes and kind of make them rubbery, but the addition of the baking powder in there kind of lightens it up, so your chapati is still very soft and nice, and I mean, it's just a great texture. But if you're not going to be using the whey protein, then feel free to leave that baking powder out and you should be fine.
So if the number of ingredients scares you, every single time you want to make chapati, you have to put all this stuff in. You can always just multiply the numbers and make it in bulk, and you can just keep the flour aside for every day of the week and make it as you need it.
So we hope that you guys enjoy this recipe as much as we do. It's life-changing for us. It's delicious. And if you do try it out, please give us a feedback, write it in the comments, let us know what you think about it and how it's going to change your life.
So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you get a post notification every single time we post a new video. And also give us a like, and remember to follow us on Instagram. We post a lot of the foods we eat on there.
And remember, as always, it's easy to keto.
If you know how. Thanks for watching. Bye.
A lot of these ingredients come pre-milled or... What the heck?